All right, we are live. We are live. We're having some internet connectivity challenges, so we hope that it won't be glitchy all the way through our conversation, but it might be glitchy at first. So, Michael Gervais, welcome. Do you pronounce it Gervais? Do you pronounce it Gervais or Gervais?
No S, Gervais.
No, that's what I thought. Okay, that's what I thought. It's one of those names that every time I look at it, I have this correction mechanism happening, and I think I'm wrong no matter which way I say it. So I appreciate you correcting me, or not correcting me. I was right.
You're right. You had it right. Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to talk with you. And I really appreciate you being willing to hop on with me to talk about some of the things that you're seeing as a result of not the coronavirus, but this massive shift that's happened in life for all of us, really. And when I think back to the conversations I've had with guests on my podcast, your ability to just see through a lot of the bullshit, a lot of the stuff that is getting in the way and getting right down to the nuts and bolts of things, you were immediately popped into my head. Like I want to have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So, what are you seeing? I mean, I'm going to keep it really broad, and then we can get into it as specific as we need to, as the conversation goes.
Okay. Well, as a licensed psychologist, I see the world through the psychological lens. And human behavior is really at the core of psychology, right? The thinking and behaving of people. And then spending time with people that are on the frontier, that are tip of the arrow, best in the world in multiple crafts, it provides a unique lens into what does it take to become one's very best? What does it take to explore potential? And in context of what's happening right now, what's happened is most of us have been shook down to some very basic, fundamental first principles. And if those first principles are not crystal clear, this is a very hard time for people. And so what are those first principles? Food, shelter, safety, belonging are kind of the core concepts. And then right next to that are the behavior or the values that guide thoughts, words, and behaviors. And so if you're struggling with food, shelter, safety, that stuff, okay, different conversation. If you've been shook down from you can't do the things that you normally do, well, that's not that bad. Okay, if you still have food, shelter, whatever. But if you can't do what you normally did, and then you're like, well, I'm not sure what to do now with myself, it's a dearth of understanding the clarity of first principles and values that guide your thoughts, words, and actions. The most dominant people the most powerful people. I was thinking about dominant competitors, but the most powerful people on the planet, they have an understanding that they are responsible and they dictate their own experience in life. The external world does not dictate the internal experience. And so that takes time to figure out how to do that. And it takes time both investigating the internal about what matters most, and then experiences where those internal skills get tested. And right now, that's what's being tested right now. Our ability to manage the uncertainty is heightened. But guess what? 8 weeks ago, I barely knew what I was going to say. 8 weeks ago, I didn't know, and nor did you, Andy, know how the day was going to unfold. We had a sense, but we're a bit lazy about it. And when I say lazy, we're lazy about embracing the fragility of the unfolding moment. And it's one of the things that the best in the world at whatever craft, and I'm thinking sport and performance right now, is that they're very skilled at being connected to the fragility of the present moment. And because that's where high performance happens, in the present moment. So they have to train their mind to be in the present moment, in the unfolding, unpredictable unknown. The sense of uncertainty is not foreign to the elite athlete. They actually have something to teach us right now, which is they're skilled at it because they fundamentally orientate their life for it. Andy, there's no hacks. There's no shortcuts, as you know.
Isn't there a supplement or a pill or something I could do to just, like, give me the red pill or the blue pill, whatever?
It's a fundamental commitment and a fundamental orientation to like, okay, how do I get better at being me in the present moment?
Right. And I see exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I can relate it to my past, whether as a musician, as an adventure racer. I thrived. I look forward to those. I didn't so much as a musician, but as an adventure racer, that's where I was my best, is when I didn't know moment to moment what was going to happen. It's why I liked adventure racing. Like triathlons to me were boring. Like I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was coming. Yeah, like there's no fun in that. Like give me the unknown and the uncertainty and get something sprung on you. And yet this experience in life is, I see now, right now, talking about it, how similar they are, but I wasn't thinking that as of like 3 minutes ago.
Well, it's a function of framework too, though, right? So if the framework is, I'm highly skilled, bring it. Let's see what you got. Let's see what I got. I love this unknown, this challenge. And it's based on a narrative that I know my stuff. I'm pretty skilled at this. What does that mean? Well, basketball, adventure racing, downhill skiing, it doesn't matter. Like I've put in the work, is this self-narrative. I've put in the work to be skilled at this. So now I want to challenge myself. So what most people haven't done though, and I wish this wasn't the case, but I think that there are many silver linings to this experience, but one of them will be the calling to organize your psychology. Right? Because the anxiety is hard for people right now. Mental health is a concern right now. Depression, anxiety, suicide, addiction, any of the stuff that's been laying in the weeds a little bit that has been at bay because of the busyness of the world is now creeping forward. And that scares me, right? And I think the echo of mental health will be around far longer than we imagine. And I'm imagining, based on some of the research, 24, 36 months later, where those that believe they're not in a position to be able to talk about their emotions and their feelings, call it middle-aged men, that echo takes a bit longer to manifest. And so we're going to see something down the road that I think is not going to be, it's not going to be wonderful, but we need to prepare for it. Just like we're not prepared for this. I was just looking, Andy, this is way off topic, but South Korea has 256 deaths at the time of this recording.
It doesn't seem like very many.
No, right. Not compared to the 74,000 that we have.
Right.
They have 51 million people in their country. If I have my data right, and this was a quick look that I was. Now, you could say, well, they're not reporting it, whatever. I mean, I don't know that, but if you just look at the numbers, there's something not right here. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, one of the things that I'm hearing you say is the elite performers have this innate, and maybe it's not innate, maybe it's practiced, but there's something genetically, behaviorally that they've established where they know they're in charge, not their circumstances. Like they're not at the mercy of the circumstances. They're at the mercy of themselves and their ability to control what they can control and then deal with what they can't control when it occurs.
Yeah. So what you're describing is a psychological term that's not very cool, but it's called locus of control. And people that have a high internal locus of control, basically the narrative in their head is that I am responsible for my experience. Mm-hmm. People that have a high external locus of control, they basically that narrative is like, why does this always happen to me? Yeah. And so the healthier orientation is an internal locus, which is like, hey, I determine my experience in life. Whether I lose my job or get a promotion, I determine how I'm going to respond to that. And what does that mean that I determine it? Well, it's based on your first principles, your philosophical approach to life. Nobody can give that to you, by the way. You have to learn that. You have to, investigate and discover what are the core principles that are going to navigate your life. And that means that there's these it's almost like they're corridors to thoughts, behaviors, and actions. Like if you see $100 on the floor in a in a parking lot, and you think you might have saw the woman that dropped it, well, your principles will guide your thoughts, your words, and your actions.
Right.
And
Right.
because if your principle is like, hey, you got to get yours. I see 100, I'm getting it. But if your principle is about fairness or equity or citizenship, well, then you might say, hey, excuse me, so it's the principles that are guiding us. And then what are they guiding? Your ability to navigate the unfolding, unpredictable unknown. But that's only step one, Andy. Step two is to have the mental skills to be able to deal with those conditions when they're hard.
Right.
And so the mental skills, as you recognize, are, and this is a skill. Locus of control is a skill. Confidence is a skill. You can train it. Just like you do sets and reps with hamstring curls or whatever you're doing, squats, this and that. You can train confidence. You can train calm. You can train awareness. You can train your ability to trust yourself. You can train optimism. You can train perseverance, resiliency. These are all mental skills that are trainable, sets and reps, not just ideas, but sets and reps can be done.
Well, because there's a difference between having a good idea and then actually putting the idea into action and making it happen in your life, right? Yeah. And how? This might seem like a dumb question. I don't know. How do you train these things? Like, it doesn't seem obvious to me. How do you do that?
Okay, so I haven't met, and I would imagine you'd fall into the same idea, but I'd be pleased if you disagree with the statement that I haven't met an athlete or coach that disagrees yet, that confidence is important. Would you agree?
Not important at all. Like, what? Of course.
Okay, so then when you ask, to most learned people, well, where's it come from? They go, oh, past success. Oh, that's why you struggle with it. That's not the case. So I'll give you clear evidence. I'll tell you where it comes from and how to train it in a second. But I don't know if you ever had this experience, but I've worked with plenty of folks that have won world championships. They have won Olympic medals, gold even. And they go into the next championship and they're nervous. And nervousness is an indication of overactivity, over anxiousness, over whatever, because of a little bit of doubt that has crept in. And so why would a person that's already demonstrated that they are and have the capability to be the best on the planet at something, why would they be nervous?
Right.
Why would they have some doubt? Because they're not sure, but they're not sure that they can handle if it doesn't go according to plan. And so confidence comes from one place and one place only, not past success. It comes from what you say to yourself. Now, when that narrative is grounded in something that is stable and true and durable and has been tested, meaning it is grounded in real experience in your life, then you've got it. So you have to know what you say to yourself that helps you feel big, that helps you feel free. And then you have to have credibility to be able to say it, which means that you've been through some hard times. You've been tested,
right.
And I think one of the more powerful things that humans can say is, I can do difficult things. That's a statement that builds confidence. And you only can say that statement to yourself if you've been through difficult things. And then, so I would suggest, to maybe you and your community, is that you say, if you like that statement, but you got to make your own, maybe that's not one that somebody likes. You got to find your own statements that give you that right confident vibe. But I like the one, I can do hard things. I can do difficult things. And then what is the 1, 2, 3 things in my life that give me the right to say I can do hard things? And when I know what those are, then I've earned it. I've earned the right to say I can do hard things.
So many things going through my head right now. One of the little boxes. So I just published a journal. It's called the Whole Life Planner and Journal, based on years of collecting other people's journals. and looking
Yeah,
at the right
I love
prompts and the
journals.
right cues. And
Yes.
I've got on my shelf, I'm looking at about 30 right now, different journals that I've used parts of. I published this one because it was always frustrating to me that I could never find a planner. I could never find a planner with enough room to journal. And I could never find a journal that had cues in it that would make me feel like it's some planner. So I've got both. I've got both in my thing. And one of the little boxes that I came up with that has been really powerful. I didn't really know how powerful it was going to be for me until after I published it and I'm using it. The cue is, what do I wish my biggest fan would say to me today? And every day I write, dude, you're the bomb. Like, it starts with some version of that. You've got this. You can't fail. I'm in your, like, it's almost like I've got this internal, just like the world's greatest fan reminding me of how capable I am, of how strong, confident, whatever it is. And it's amazing how answering that little question helps me every day. Like, it just shifts whatever I'm thinking or experiencing, or it sounds very similar to what you're talking about. It's how you talk to yourself. I never really would have thought of that, the confidence.
Yeah, and what's nice
I would have agreed with it takes past success. I didn't really think about, because I was nervous every time I started a race, whether I had won the last one or not. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like that you're hitting on is that your narrative, what you say to yourself, is your responsibility, and nobody else can say it to you. You have to, if they do say it to you, you have to believe it. You have to accept it. And you can say it to yourself. It just has to be credible. You have to have some past experiences that give you the right to say it, but it's not the thing in the past itself. It's what you say to yourself, about your past, and about, here's a fancy phrase, about the appraisal of what is about to happen. So what we're always doing, our brain and our mind work together for this, it's a self-inventory, and it's happening real time all the time. Self-inventory checking. Actually, it's called the default mode network in our brain. So there's a self-inventory, and then there's an appraisal matched up against the challenge. And the challenge could be running up a flight of stairs. It could be walking up a flight of stairs, holding some things out of balance, or it could be going into a cage for a cage fight. It could be, on the top of a 40-foot vertical spine that no one's ever skied down before. Or it could be
climbing the nose without ropes, like Alex Honnold, craziness, right?
Or it could be coming into your home knowing that you have to tell your family that you were just let go of your job. Like whatever it is that there's this constant appraisal that's taking place. Inventory, what's my inventory, matched up against what I think the challenge ahead is. And so if you think the challenge is bigger than your inventory, we got problems. Okay, that's where we start to spin into some sort of anxious, constricted tightness. And I mean that from a physiological, a neurological, as well as a behavioral and psychological standpoint. There's a constriction.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, that's what we call anxiety. That's what we call frustration. That's what we call fear.
When I experience that, I experience it in my throat and in my solar plexus. Like it lives in those two places in my body. And I know exactly, and it's exactly what you described is how I don't remember what you just said. Something about my own inventory isn't big enough to handle what I perceive as coming my way.
That's right.
Like my biggest fan would say, dude, you're in trouble here. You better run away. That voice doesn't come out in that box. I'll tell you that right now. But that's the voice that causes the constriction in my throat and
that's exactly right.
The feeling in my solar plexus.
So that's why we train awareness as well. So I want to finish this confidence thing. That's what we just talked about, is like the mechanics of confidence, but you practice it by owning your narrative, owning your statements that you say to yourself about yourself, and being responsible with them. No, so not letting like this kind of, I don't know, spontaneous, let me leave it up to the wind to see how I'm going to feel. It's like, no, 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 practice saying things to yourself, about what you can do. Practice it. Maybe you got to write it down. Maybe you want to tell it to somebody. Maybe you want to just meditate and, absorb the statements and then just practice what it looks like. It's some sort of imagination, if you will, in there. But
the affirmations, what about affirmations? I mean, are those helpful? Do you believe?
The science is relatively weak there, so there's something that's good about affirmations. But if an affirmation here, okay, well, let me kind of sift it through with you a little bit. Remember when you were in 4th grade and you had to go to the chalkboard and write, "I will not talk in class," right? Or "I will not whatever."
Yep.
And
no, that never happened to me. I don't remember that at all.
Not you. I will not make noise in the back of the room, right?
Yeah.
That is like, it didn't do much for you, did it? That's an affirmation.
Because I was resisting. You can't tell me what to do. I had all kinds of other thoughts going on in my head. I don't really remember, but I'm making that up now. Like, F you.
It was like this, it was this intellectual exercise by somebody else that they thought it was good, that you were going to adopt it because you said it enough. It doesn't really work. But the statements that you make that are based in credible, real, time-tested, true, rugged, hard times where you've come through it and you're better because of it, if you can make statements like a bold statement about 1, 2, 3 of those types of things combined, that's real. That is it, and
so it's really about the authenticity of the affirmation. So if I have a couple of phrases or statements that I can sense inside bring me real juice, real power, then those may work. Those may be helpful.
And I would just say, just sharpen the affirmation by knowing what gives you the right to say it. So it's not like, hey, I learned that I'm supposed to say I'm kind, or I'm smart, or I'm capable. Well, what gives you the right to say that?
I love that.
That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah, because words without actions are meaningless in the world that we live in.
Yeah, and actions without love are pointless, and actions without, like, connected to the virtues that matter to you are really meaningless for sure. And so that's how that works, the thoughts, words, and actions. And those guardrails that I was talking about, those bumpers, right? Those pillars that you bounce off against, those are the core virtues that help shape your thoughts, your words, and your actions. But you can practice your thoughts. You can practice your words. Certainly, we know you can practice your actions. And it goes in that order. So actions are downstream. Upstream are your thoughts and your words. And then
words or feelings. Where do feelings fit in there?
Feelings they're technically actions.
Okay.
Yeah. So they are physical sensations that give you indicators of the way that you're interpreting an event. So they're physical sensations. Emotions are physical.
So thoughts are really the start of the sequence.
Yeah. And it's not quite that clean, because our brain is nestled, our brain and spinal cord have these nerves that go out to our muscles, and from our muscles and skeletal systems, they go back up into the spinal system. So it's not quite as crisp as that. It's an embedded triangulation between environment, body, brain, and mind, right? And so there's this triangulation of those three that are always unfolding. But I will say this, and the brightest minds in science are not exactly sure how this thing works, but I do know for certain that I have the ability to navigate my own thoughts, while I don't have the ability to navigate and curate and dictate the environment, as well as my brain is, its prime mover is survival. And so if you leave the brain unchecked, it's just going to try to figure out how to survive, right? Scanning the world for danger, small part of the brain is going to scan the world for opportunity. And it's our mind, back up to the thoughts, it's our mind that software that governs how the brain is supposed to work. But most people, they haven't significantly upgraded their mind. They've let Shape magazine do it. They've let their parents do it. They've let their knucklehead kids, friends from the block do it. Like it's been kind of patchy. And that's part and parcel because of psychology has not done a good job of making it cool, making it something that is for optimization. I mean, we have been nested in suffering for most of our tradition. And we're starting to come out of that the last 40 years. Sports psychology has been about the science of studying the most optimal performance that humans can do. And we're starting to share that now, which is really, you've been on that thought for a long time though.
How are the people that you're working with, the elite performers, handling the realness of life right now? It's not their sport. It's not their thing that they've, I imagine Alex Honnold would feel much more comfortable climbing the nose without ropes than perhaps he does in the coronavirus. I don't know, Alex Honnold. How are you seeing that manifest? How are they doing it?
Well, I'm actually seeing it across a spectrum. And there's some athletes, they have made the Olympic team and they're thankful. They're very happy that there's a break because it's giving them more time to figure it out, to get better. And so they're really happy about it. Some, it's their last go and they don't know if their body's going to hold it together, And so people are all over the spectrum, and some had incredible wealth and some are really struggling. And so it is a spectrum, but I would say that for the most part, athletes are very skilled and trained at managing uncertainty, and they're very good. The great ones are very good at controlling what's in their control, to your point earlier. So that puts them in a position of control. And for the most part, it tends to be the thinkers around them, the coaches and whatever, the people that, tend to run a little anxious, saying, hey, you need to do more reps. You need to do more. And the athletes typically are like, wait, hold on. You're going to blow me up. So there's a spectrum. And at the same time, their skills are paying dividends in many ways.
How important is it, do you see or think, for someone to have a coach or someone who can remind you of these things about yourself? Like where does that fit in?
Well, I'll go upstream on a thought and then answer that. Is that when you think about wisdom, right? Let's go like all the way upstream, like the richest understanding of what is true. Okay. That how do you generate wisdom? You can't buy it. You can't read a book and become wise. You have to earn it. And so how do you earn it? There's 3 ways that I'm familiar with. Mindfulness. So investigating what is true within. Conversations with wise men and women. And then the third is writing, because it's a forcing function to make sense of what you believe and what you think, and trying to answer the big questions in life. So those 3. So conversations with wise men and women, writing, and then mindfulness. And so if we pull on that string, a conversation with wise men and women, why not, if you don't know a wise man or woman, right? Why not go hire
one quick? Find one, please.
Like find somebody that's switched on, that's been down the path that you want to go, and finds great value in passing you the flashlight, and like, hey, I'll walk it with you. Now, I would say they better have walked down that path and really understand it, because the human experience is complicated. It is, it's not for the faint of heart. It is not for those that don't understand science and frameworks and the uniqueness of each person. So if you're going to hire somebody, make sure that they have chops. And you can do it from formal education, but you can also do it from people that have, been down the road that you want to go down, and they've earned it.
Well, I love the 3 points in that, because 2 of those 3 are really self-governed. You can write anytime you want to. You can have experience today and you can write about it tomorrow, and you actually gain wisdom. And you can also be mindful. You can also practice that on your own. So it's not like you're stuck if you can't find a wise person or don't have the money to hire a coach. You're not stuck in developing your own wisdom.
That's exactly right.
And I would imagine that influences your locus of control, right? That's going to help pull it in.
And mindfulness has been around 2,600 years. The science is incredible. We're catching up with why it's been an ancient practice. All 11 world religions have some sort of mindfulness practice. And if we just stay down like the science, secular, pragmatic lane of it, is that it's the training of awareness. It's the training of refocusing your mind. It's the training of concentration. And when you train concentration to be in the present moment, you're increasing your awareness of what's happening inside you and what's happening outside of you. And when you have better awareness, you have the ability to adjust more swiftly, more accurately. Adjust in what way? Back to those core principles, back to those bumpers we were talking about, those first principles. And so if somebody looks at you dirty and rolls their eyes, and it's at a board meeting and it's in front of your peers, and now you got a decision to make. If you're unaware of your emotions, if you're unaware of your thoughts, if you're unaware of the context, like it's hard to respond eloquently, let alone productively.
Well, you don't respond, you react. You don't get to choose.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh God, Andy, I love these conversations with you because I know you know this, and it's complicated and it's wonderful. And it's
I know it, but it's always incredibly helpful to unravel it, and I can't just, I'm not very good at unraveling it myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay at it, but man, having the interaction for me is like, I guess this is the conversation with a wise person. Because, like you're contributing to my wisdom and my growth, maybe vice versa. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, well, you've been down the path, what it takes to be on the frontier, to take risks. The reason you're so attracted to psychology is because you've been testing it for a long time. And the way I know you is that you're a systems thinker, and you say psychology is really important. And there's a lot of science I'm not sure about, but there's a few things that I really know have been valuable. How do I put those into a system?
Right.
And how do I build a community of people that are trying to solve the same thing? And so for that part, like that is an arc of growth. That's an arc of improvement to want to put in practice, the psychology, and psychology is invisible. That's the hard part of this conversation. Everything we're talking about is invisible, and we got to put the best we can. We got to put handles on it so that we can get our arms around it in some way.
Yeah. Without handles, it's just a nice conversation.
That's right. Without practice, it's just ideas.
Right. That's so right. on that note, what I'm looking at some of the comments that people have been making. What's a book you'd recommend reading on this topic in these areas? I'm sure there's multiple books.
Yeah. I mean, I like that. I like the question, and I never quite know where to go with it because I bifurcate in two different lanes, and one of them is like, go read the ancients, go read the things that have been tested.
Right.
Read the Bibles of the 11 world religions to start with big ideas. Go get Socrates under your belt. Go get, Plato, and go get some of the Stoics. Like, get some of that under your belt, which is fashionable in some respects right now. Like the Tao Te Ching from Taoism is incredible. It's complicated and beautiful. Do it with somebody else though, because it's like the Zen koans and the mind benders in there are amazing. The Bible, the Gita. I mean, those are real books of wisdom. Like, start there, right? And because I'll say this, like, when you do figure out some wisdom, things get so much easier. Like,
right.
It's not just wisdom is not reserved for the ivory tower, and it's not reserved for the old people. It can be you. It can be me. And so I want to start upstream with those big ones, And then I also there's the other stuff. I don't read a whole lot of pop psych book. I'm spend time with my nose in journals, trying to understand kind of what the science is teaching. But there are some fun ones like Mind Gym by Gary Mack. It's this little kind of easy to read book that's like, it's got really nice, simple core principles of practicing psychology in there. And so that's it's a simple one for athletes and performers and people that want to read like 2 pages a night and get, and
get something.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's one of the, I mean, there's a lot of difference between me and you. I'm a pop psychology. That's what I read.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend the years that it would take me to wade through the 11, the 11 religious, what do you call it? What do you even call them? The foundational books, writings of the 11 major religions. I tried reading the Bible once. I got through Genesis, I think. I don't even know if I made it through Genesis.
There you go. Right.
It's not something I'm proud of, but
Revelation,
Start with Revelation.
Feels like we're in it right now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Right.
Crazy times.
Well, thank you so much. As with all my conversations, I could go on for hours. I mean, this just opens up a can of worms that is so easy to go down. And I also know that I just want to be respectful of people's time and your time. And I'm just grateful that we can do this. And
I am too. And I appreciate your approach. I love your laugh. I love what you're doing for your community. And I enjoyed our conversation on finding mastery. And I'd like to take a moment though, if I can, and talk about like what I'm experiencing the current condition and maybe a few ways through it. Could I do that? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't want to over ask you.
Oh yeah. No. I love this too. So,
okay.
If first of all, this experience is emotional. And so the emotions are important to understand how to work with them. And so if you're feeling sad or depressed or anxious, this first step is just to try to name it. And so if you can name it and you can say, oh, this is, I'm sad, or I'm scared, or I'm freaking pissed, or I'm tired. The first step is to try to name it.
I just grabbed something. This is called Plutchkit's Wheel of Emotions.
Oh yeah.
I have trouble with words. I can't somebody asked me how I'm feeling and I'm like, I suddenly go brain dead. I can't even, I'm sad. But there's so many other words that could, sad is this whole area of the circle. I'm like, oh wow, maybe I'm actually ashamed, or I feel victimized or isolated, so I find this, I have it sitting on my desk. I find it useful. I use it all the time.
Yeah, there's a handful of those models that are pretty interesting, right? And if you want to oversimplify it, what you're talking about is nuances, which is advanced. It's good. If you wanted to oversimplify it, I would scale. People say that there's 7. Old research was like there's 7 primary, and then new research is like, wait, no, there's like 256. And so I would oversimplify this, and I'd say, let's go for 4 basic scales and say, are you somewhere on the sad scale? And then just put a number to it, 1 to 10. And as you get better, you can name what an 8 is. I'm depressed. That's like an 8, cool. Right? Grief is a 10. Like this feels like grief to me, like somebody's died, and the lowest on sad is like, I'm kind of bummed. But just put some numbers to it. So a sad scale, numbers to it, 1 to 10. Fear scale, 1 to 10. The most fear is, what's the most fear? Like I'm petrified. And a little bit of fear is like I'm surprised. It's not fear bad, but like, and then anger, same thing. And then joy or happiness, same thing. And just start there. And then with somebody that you really want to be connected with and you trust or whatever, with, whoever that is in your life, go through that exercise with them. See if you can name it. And then it's that simple. Like that's step number 1, the awareness to go and the skill to say, what's the emotion that I'm feeling? And then to calibrate that with somebody else that's not feeling that same thing. It's really powerful. It's really powerful now.
What do you mean? What do you mean calibrate it? So like you and I would get together and I would say, Michael, I'm experiencing fear. I'm a 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Like so,
And I would say like as a clinician, I'd say, well, what does that mean to you? And then we talk about it. And where's that come from? And we talk about it and say, okay.
But if you're just my buddy, buddy, like because you were talking about like 2 people getting together and bouncing this off each other.
Well,
How,
let's say, yeah, good. Let's say I'm not trained. I would be curious. And I say, well, what does that mean? And then so we would talk about it a little bit. Right. But my job as a great friend is to be there for you and try to understand. So it's curiosity, but because would you say scared? Because you're scared doesn't mean that I need to be scared. So I'm going to maintain my integrity and be like, oh, look, is that how it's happened for you? Ooh, I feel you. Ooh, that does sound scary, but it doesn't mean that I'm freaking out. It doesn't mean I'm scared. So I'm maintaining my integrity. And now I'm this I'm this stability that you're vibing off of as well. And there's a calibration there that helps amplify healing. So we know from science, just naming the emotion diffuses it. And then if you do it in the presence of others, where there's a calibration, that's part of healing, we think.
And resist. What I'm also thinking, and this is from my own experience, resisting fixing, resisting trying to solve it for them.
Bro,
I know that works great with my wife.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Oh,
I stopped giving advice like 20 years ago because it just does not work.
Right. I mean, you're in the business of giving advice in a way.
No. There is no advice. No, it's
psychologists don't give advice.
Well, there's lots of skills ranges in psychology. Okay, but the best, right? I think this is a biased model. The best psychologists are discoverers. They are the adventurers of the internal invisible world, and they're looking for and holding back. They're looking for the genius in you and holding it back up. They're looking for the pain points and they're holding it back up so that you can see it. And then it's mapped against who you want to be with who you are now and how you can be the man or woman you want to be more often. It's not complicated. It's not like, oh, well, you know what I think you should do? You should divorce, or you should go get a different job. Like, what is that? No, that's bad business, dude. That's a disrespect to the regard of the other person's life experiences and where they came from.
I love that. That's I mean, it's one of the ways I phrase what a coach does. It's not, my job's not, I don't have to have done what you're doing to be a good coach. I don't need to be able to hit the golf ball as far as you can, or I don't need to be able to, I don't have to be a lawyer to coach a lawyer. It's basically doing what you just said. Was beautiful.
Awesome.
Okay, so I didn't mean to go down a different wormhole. So we're back on naming the emotion.
Yeah, this is an emotional experience right now. That's what we're in. Uncertainty. It's a clever little way to say I'm scared. I am overwhelmed. Okay. I don't know how the future is going to go, and I'm afraid I don't have what it takes. So if that's the case, double down, triple down right now on who you want to be. Who is the man that you want to be? Okay. Whether you have enough food to feed your children this week or you don't, and I don't say that lightly. Who do you want to be? Because that is always under your control. How do you want to make money? That is actually under your control as well. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the job that you've always wanted, but how do you want to go out and make your money? Because you can do things that are illegal, legal, whatever. But the question number one is, who do you want to be? That's foundational. And that is always 100% under your control. And I'll tell you that it's really important to triple down on thinking about what could be amazing, what could be good. There's a fundamental orientation when we think about the future, either through a pessimistic lens or an optimistic lens. They are learned. We're not born optimistic or pessimistic. They are learned. And optimism is the fundamental belief that it's going to work out. And so spending disciplined time to imagine what that could be is important. But you can't just spend all your time imagining. You got to put it to work. Mm-hmm. And so, I was talking to my wife the other night. One of my friends, his job is stripped down. He's a single father. He's stripped down, and he's like, dude, I'm back. I'm taking a class at MIT right now. He's like, how'd you do that? He goes, well, they're offering an online class. It's one of the kind of extension. He's not in the university. He's like, but I'm just getting better. I've got a little bit of money, and I'm reinvesting in like frameworks that and I'm reading a ton. I'm exercising. Man, you got to invest in you. And so it's hard times. And
How do you, I want to go back to what you said. How do you answer that question? Who do you want to be?
it's
Like
the
that's not so easy to,
no,
I mean, you like, that could occupy my brain for quite a while.
it's a lifelong question.
Right.
Right. And if you're not clear or don't have some sense of it, you become what others want you to be.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's not a safe narrative. Like what others want me to be, poof, man, I don't know. Like some of these narratives of when people look at me, what they think I should be or whatever, like that doesn't fit. And so it's your responsibility. It's hard. It's an ancient question. Who are you? Who do you want to become?
Well, it's also interesting when you phrase it the way, who do others want me to be? We all have a level of learned, a learned desire to want to fit in and to be, I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience. I mean, I spent probably the first 45 years of my life, and I'm only 53, trying to figure out, how do I fit in? Like, who do I need to be to belong? And that's all based on what I think others want me to be. And I've still got that. That's still part. I can't just get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's a big thing.
It's a very big thing. And if left unchecked, you will be exactly what others want you to be. If left unchecked, which, I mean, please, my wife is female and Latin. And if left to the zeitgeist of what the world wants her to be, if you look at like earnings, like she was just sharing some numbers with me the other day, and looking at the gender bias and the ethnic bias of who makes more money, and Latin women make the least amount of money per job in the Western world. So if she leaves it up to chance, well, she'll be on the bottom of the totem pole for financial opportunities, and then she'll be likely objectified. Like that's awful, So it's your responsibility. This is a great time to recalibrate. It's a great time to do it, and hopefully you find a community that is interested in the same thing.
Yeah, and community could mean one person.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like I get tremendous power. It's funny. I found community in Peloton, and it's not even a community. I don't know anybody. I've never Peloton with someone. Like,
yeah.
It's a very strange thing to me. Like I never really expected to be digging Peloton as much as I dig it. Because I don't think I would dig it if it was just a spinning bike in my garage without the video, without the screen.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. We might have to do this. Who knows when all this is going to be over? But we may have to do this again because I've got a feeling that this is going to continue to, raise its ugly head's going to keep poking up. And,
there'll be an echo for a while for us. Can I share some fun news?
Absolutely.
I got a book coming out.
Whoa! Well, that's the book to read. Come on.
Yeah,
that's the book.
Yeah, right. That book. I should have said that. Yeah, we've got. I think last we spoke, talked about it a little bit, but I distilled it down to 5 main pillars and how to practice each one of them. And my co-author, I'm honored, is Coach Pete Carroll for the Seattle Seahawks. And so the two of us, it's coming out in July. It's Audible.
What's it called?
It's an Audible original. It's called Compete to Create.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so
that's your name of your business, your other business, right? With Pete?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's like, let's not confuse people. It's the main pillars of what we're trying to share, of what we have done together in elite sport and how we're translating it to business and now individuals. So we're so stoked.
That's exciting, man. That's really exciting. Yeah. Where, if people want to find out more about your book or more about you or the things that you're up to, where do they find you?
Probably the easiest ways are, I'll give you some social handles and then some other stuff. So social is at Michael Gervais, and that's for all of the, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn, Twitter. And then I've got two platforms. One is competetocreate.net. And so that's an online training. And then we've got Finding Mastery, which is a podcast. And so that's findingmastery.net. and then compete to create.net. And then people like, I should probably spell Gervais, for the handle. It's Gervais.
Yeah, don't leave the S off. Well, it's on the screen too. So if you're
oh, good,
you
good,
should be able to
yeah.
see that. I don't know what you see on your end. Do you see that your name is on the screen, or you don't? You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I appreciate you, Andy.
This is so great. I appreciate you and all the work you do, and love that we connected and that we continue to stay on this journey together, this path together. So
awesome, man. I appreciate you. Yeah. Best success, best health.
I'm gonna stop the broadcast. Just hang on one sec.